Hey everybody, Mike Toy Bonsai Boise. In this video I'm going to show you how you can turn a Ficus fusion from this into something more like this. It's really not that hard, but there are some easier ways to do it and harder ways, so I'm going to show you. So this is going back a few years. My original method was to do it kind of like this. Just group a bunch of them together, wire it up, tape it up with plumber's tape, and then put it in a bottle of water for X amount of time. Starts to sprout roots and then plant it. And that way works. Here are some that I've already had established there, a whole bunch of them. You don't have to go overboard like I did, but this is just how I did it. And you can see on top they just look like a bunch of scraggly sticks with leaves on them. No structure, no style, nothing. And that's to be expected at first. Here's my new method. Now what I do is I take a bunch of cuttings and I just kind of clip off any little nubs and dead branches and bumps, anything like that. What I'm going for is to make the surface as smooth as I can so that when I group them together, there's as much surface touching as possible. They fuse together a lot easier and a lot quicker that way, as opposed to like the braided look. I've done the braided, I've got one, and you see them in stores a lot where they braid trees together. And that way works, but it just takes longer to fuse and it just looks bumpy and kind of goofy for a long time. So if you smooth them out and get branches that sort of fit together, it goes a lot quicker, which you're going to see here in a minute. I would also say, don't go too crazy. It's never going to be perfect. Just get it pretty good. Because you can get really nitpicky sometimes trying to get it to fit just perfectly. But you find a few that sort of fit, curve the right way. And group them together. It's kind of like playing 3D Tetris a little bit sometimes. But that is essentially what I'm going for here. I did these videos called Bush to Bonsai. If you haven't seen them, I'll put a link here where you can see it. And that's where I got all these cuttings from. I would buy a gigantic ficus off of Marketplace and just chop it way down, turn it into a bonsai. And then I would have all these cuttings left over, and this is what I would do with them. So you put the bigger branches sort of in the middle, and then you fill in the little gaps with smaller branches all around. The goal of all this, by the way, I guess I should mention that, the goal of this is to achieve what would appear to be a big, thick trunk in a much shorter amount of time. That's sort of always the goal of bonsai, is to have a nice big trunk, and it gives an appearance of kind of a miniature tree, as opposed to just a little stick in a pot. So this is how you do it in faster time, and it's just kind of fun. So in this particular set, I got a group of them together, wired it up, and the reason I haven't taped it yet is because I'm putting it back in water to let them root. Taping it's kind of a little bit extra work, and the problem is at this point you don't know what's going to root and what's not. Like 3 out of 4 of them might root. Here's a good example of what I thought was a really good prospective fusion, and I think 2 out of 3 of those didn't make it. So you got to expect a little bit of that too. There's another group. And in the end, I will show you the results of a lot of these. Unfortunately, I don't have specific results on specific groups because I just have too many and it was kind of hard to keep track of. But I've got 3 or 4 results at the very end that I'll show. And then once they root, you pot them up. Unfortunately, it still looks kind of scraggly for a little while. This is about, I want to say about 3 months later, give or take. One other word to the wise, after you pot it up and they rooted, you'll know that they've rooted because, and that the roots are growing, because you'll see new growth. But wait as long as you can to trim the new growth, because it's still kind of weak. It's best to let it kind of bush out a good amount before you attack it. Here it is the following summer. You can see the white Teflon tape around there, and then some wire around the tape. The wire can still bite into the bark, even with the tape on there. It's happened to me a few times. But the tape provides a little extra protection. You can see where there's a little bit of fusion going on there with some of the branches. So I take the wire off, unravel it like a mummy. And there you can see, this one is about, I would say, halfway there. You see spots where it's fused together. Not all the way, but half the way. And if nothing else, it's just on its way. You could probably get away without taping it up again. I'm going to anyways, just because, why not? You see how it's starting to give that appearance of being just one tree. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but you can see where it's going. I put wire around it even with the tape because the wire, without a doubt, helps it fuse faster. But there's pros and cons to it. The pros are it definitely makes it fuse faster. The cons are it can bite into the bark if you're not paying attention. And now here it is as of about a week ago. I'll say I think this is the same one. I'm not 100% sure. I had it labeled at one point, and I guess I used the wrong marker because it all wore off. So I've got a pot picked out. I probably could have let it continue growing in this training pot, but frankly, I have so many of these, if I have to look at them all, I may as well look at them in pretty pots instead of ugly pots. So we'll take a look at it again now that it's been another, 3 or 4 or 5 months. That one didn't want to unravel this time. You'll see some wire scars on here too, so it's a good example of where I should have checked the wire sooner. So I'll zoom in here. Yeah, you see a little bit of wire scars. Over time, that will go away. It takes a little while, but it will. And it kind of adds a little bit of character sometimes. If they bite in a lot, then maybe not. Yeah, you can see where they're starting to fuse. Still not all the way there yet, but I don't think we're too far away. Also, the branches, you can tell, are starting to look, it starts to look more like a tree instead of just a bunch of sticks wired together. It takes a little while because branches grow out, you trim them back, and you get some ramification. One branch splits into 2, and then 2 into 4, and 4 into 8, and so it looks a little more tree-like. So overall, it still takes patience, it still takes time, lots of trial and error. But overall, anybody can do it. It's not rocket science or anything. The reason I use the Teflon tape, by the way, is because it has some stretch to it, but also some tightness. So it holds them together, but not so much that it chokes them. I'm actually going to use new wire because it'll just mold around it easier and smoother. It won't be all... Used wire is kind of all bumpy, because you've bent it up a million ways. So I'll get the new wire on there, then we'll pull it out, trim up the roots a little bit, put it in its new pot, and I'll show you some of the others. I won't go into a ton of detail on root work because that's not really the point of this particular video. I do have other videos on it, but I'll just give you kind of a look. First, I try to be all delicate and with a stick, and then I just dig in. Take it outside, wash it up really good, and it's got a lot of healthy roots, so that's great. Kind of rough prune the roots first just to get them out of the way, and then you can look for some obvious roots that aren't going to make the cut, no pun intended, like that one. It's going straight across and looks awkward and weird. And then you just look for roots that are growing, for the most part, roots growing straight down or straight up, roots that are too high up on the trunk, because you want it to be growing out laterally all around. Got some fresh soil here in the pot. Got plenty of videos on how I make my soil if you're curious. Kind of decide which way I want to go. One side has more roots than the other. And plop it down here in this new home. I kind of built up a little mound right in the middle, just so that when you're putting it down, it sort of forces some of that soil into the crevices, because you don't want air pockets in there. And put in some soil all around. Get yourself a chopstick. Work the soil into the roots. That way, again, you're getting rid of all those air pockets. Put in a little more soil. And voila. That part takes a little while, and it was kind of boring, so I skipped it. I put in some rocks for stability. You can wire your trees in. Lots of people do it. I usually don't, for whatever reason. I just prefer to put rocks in there. But if you can picture what this looked like initially, a bunch of sticks with wire wrapped around it to hold it together, scraggly looking branches on top, in very little time, it can look like this. And yeah, it still looks weird because it's got that white tape on there. I haven't found a different color Teflon tape yet. If I can find some, that'd be great. Something that blends in a little more with the bark, but I don't think that's going to be on too much longer. I'd give it maybe 6 months to a year probably. Then I'll be able to take that tape and wire off. Then it'll just look like a tree. Here's another one I did. Very similar. The process was the exact same as I just showed. Just a different set of cuttings, fusing together. All of that was the exact same. And then one more. And I've got lots of these. And you could do it too. It's free and easy. You just use cuttings from a established tree. Leave me any comments or questions. Would love to hear it. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day.